Some mornings, you open your eyes, and the day already feels too heavy to begin. Zara had felt that way for so long, she stopped expecting it to change. But then, one old woman and one small wooden cup were about to teach her something that would quietly change everything. This is the story of Zara, a young woman who felt like her life had quietly stopped moving. And by the end of this story, you'll understand how one small, quiet habit can slowly turn a stuck life into a moving one. The village of Ashen Creek moved slowly in the mornings. Thin gray smoke rose from a few chimneys. Somewhere, a rooster called out, but nobody seemed to hurry. Near the edge of the village, behind a low clay walls, stood a small house with a quiet, closed-up feeling. The kind of house that seemed to be holding its breath. Inside that house lived Zara, 23 years old. Slim, with an oval face and long dark hair pulled into a loose braid. She wore the same faded blue-gray dress most days. Not because she didn't care, but because getting dressed for what, exactly? Her eyes were tired in a way that had nothing to do with sleep. Her shoulders curved slightly inward, like she was trying to take up less space in the world. Each morning, Zara would wake up and lie there for a long time, thinking about the small garden behind her house, dry and neglected. Thinking about the empty water jar by the door, thinking about everything she should do. And then, she would simply turn over and go back to sleep. One afternoon, her younger cousin stopped by to borrow a tool. He glanced at the dry garden, the empty jar, the unswept floor, and didn't say anything. He didn't have to. Zara saw it in his eyes. That quiet disappointment. She closed the door a little faster than she meant to. The next morning, Zara walked to the well, not because she wanted to, but because there was no water left at all. On her way back, she passed the home of Aunt Nafisa, 68 years old. A soft, kind face, lined with years of quiet living. A gray headscarf wrapped neatly around her head. Her back slightly bent, like a tree that had leaned the same way for a long time. Aunt Nafisa was sitting outside her door, as she often did, watching the path. "Zara," Aunt Nafisa said gently, "come, sit a moment, your arms look heavy." Zara hesitated. She didn't really want to talk, but there was something about Aunt Nafisa's voice. It didn't ask too much. It didn't demand anything. So she sat. "You look tired, child," Aunt Nafisa said, not as a judgment, just noticing. "I'm just stuck," Zara said quietly. "Nothing I do seems to matter." Aunt Nafisa nodded slowly. I know that feeling well." Aunt Nafisa stood up slowly, went inside, and came back with a small clay jar, almost empty, and one wooden cup. She placed the jar on the ground between them. Then, she dipped the cup into a bucket of water nearby and poured just one cup into the jar. "Watch," she said. The water barely reached the bottom. "That's nothing," Zara said quietly. Aunt Nafisa agreed. "For today, yes, but tomorrow I pour again. And the day after, again." She paused, looking at Zara. "People will say the jar will never fill this way. They'll laugh. But the jar doesn't listen to people. The jar only knows one cup, every day, without skipping." That night, Zara lay awake, thinking about the jar, the cup, the water barely covering the bottom. The next morning, she woke up. She still felt heavy, still felt tired, but she remembered the cup. So she did one small thing. She walked to the dry garden and watered just one row. Just one. Then she stopped. It felt almost pointless. One row in a garden that needed everything. 4 days later, a dust storm swept through the village. Wind howled. Dirt and dry leaves piled against doors. By the time it passed, Zara's small watered row was buried under a layer of dust and dry debris, as if she had never touched it at all. She stood at the doorway, looking at it. And that heavy feeling, the one she knew so well, settled back into her chest. "Of course," she whispered. A few days later, an older neighbor passed by and saw Zara kneeling in the dirt again, clearing the same row. "Still at it?" the woman said, not unkindly. but with a small shake of her head. "Child, that garden has been dead for years. Some things don't come back." Zara didn't answer. She just kept brushing dust off the soil. But that night, the words sat heavy in her chest. Some things don't come back. Some things don't come back. The next morning, Zara almost didn't get up. She lay there, staring at the ceiling, the neighbor's words still echoing. Some things don't come back. But then, she thought of the jar again. 1 cup. Even on the day someone tells you it won't work. Even on the day you believe them a little. So she got up, walked to the garden, and watered 1 row, her hands moving slowly, her eyes stinging. Weeks passed. 1 row became 3. 3 became 5. The dust settled into the soil instead of burying it. Tiny green shoots began to appear, thin, fragile. But there, Zara started waking up before the sun, without thinking about it. It wasn't a decision anymore. It was just what she did now. One morning, she stepped outside with her jug and stopped. The garden, once gray and lifeless, now had soft rows of green pushing up through the soil, swaying gently. She hadn't noticed it happening. Not really. Not until that moment. Months later, the garden behind Zara's house was no longer gray. Rows of vegetables stood tall. Herbs filled the air with a soft green smell. One afternoon, the same neighbor who once shook her head walked by and stopped.
Completely still.
"Zara," she said slowly, eyes wide. "This was dead. How did you?" Zara looked at the rows of green and felt something rise in her chest. Not loud, not sudden, just quiet, steady, real. 1 row, she said softly. Every day, that's all it was. Her voice shook a little on the last word. That same week, Zara carried her first basket of vegetables to the market. Then another. Then another. And on the shelf by her door, where an almost empty clay jar once sat, the jar was now full. Not from 1 big pour, from 1 small cup, every single day. Here's something most people don't want to hear. You don't need a big plan. You don't need the perfect morning. You don't need to feel ready. You just need 1 small thing. Done today, and done again tomorrow. Most people wait to feel motivated. They wait for the storm to pass, for the doubters to stop talking, for the right moment. But Zara didn't wait for any of that. She poured the cup, watered the row, even on the days it felt pointless. Even when the dust came back. Even when someone told her it wouldn't work. That's the part nobody shows you. The quiet part. The part where nothing seems to change. Until, one day, it has. So if today feels heavy, if your life feels like an empty jar, don't wait for everything to feel right. Just pour the cup. Because small habits, done quietly, done daily, don't just fill a jar. They fill a life. I'll be honest with you, there was a season in my life that felt exactly like that empty jar. Heavy mornings, no motivation, just gray. What changed, it wasn't a big moment. It was 1 small thing, repeated, especially on the days I didn't feel like it. If that's where you are right now, you don't need more. Just 1 cup. That's enough to start. If this story touched you, subscribe and join Zavian Tales. Here, you will find stories that help you think better, live wiser, and grow stronger. And before you leave, watch my previous story. This poor boy learned what most people learn too late. That story teaches what happens when we wait too long to begin.